CM Punk and Drew McIntyre just delivered one of the greatest Hell in a Cell matches that we've ever seen. Jim Uso is back to even the odds and gave us one of the most heartwarming moments in the entire history of the Bloodline saga. The Rock made a thunderous return and channeled his inner Al Pacino. And Kevin Owens finally turned heel on Cody Rhodes.
God damn, that's good shit.
There was so much anticipation heading into Bad Blood. You had the nostalgia factor going for it by reviving one of the old school Attitude Era pay-per-views. 27 years to the day of the very first In Your House Bad Blood, where we saw the inaugural Hell in a Cell match and the debut of Kane.
That's gotta be Kane!
Having Atlanta as the host, you've got all the rich wrestling history in Georgia, how deep the culture runs in ATL, and it's a primetime location, baby. The two big attractions were built around the lore of the pay-per-view and the city respectively. On one hand, you have the 9-month-long bitter feud between Drew McIntyre and CM Punk, culminating in Hell in a Cell. And then on the other hand, you have the unlikely allies of Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns teaming together against their common enemies in Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. Both men with ties to Atlanta, Cody Rhodes being the hometown hero, Roman Reigns having graduated from Georgia Tech and played defensive tackle for the Yellow Jackets. After all the build, the vignettes, the promos, the segments, the hype was real, and both matches freaking delivered. I know these days on social media terms like the greatest, the best, the GOAT are thrown around superfluously and sometimes undeservedly so. But there's no way that you can watch that match between Drew and Punk and not have it in your top 5 Hell in a Cell matches that the company has ever produced. And I'd say top 5 is kind of lowballing it in all honesty, because this match overexceeded every expectation of these men as performers and for the stipulation itself. Whereas the special guest referee and strap matches kind of watered down and didn't match the intensity that you would expect from two guys who hate each other, this match showed you exactly how far each man was willing to go to take the other man down and displayed their animosity brilliantly. It was violent, it was brutal, and my God, was it bloody. Drew lawn darted Punk onto the cage wall, drawing first blood. Punk split Drew's head wide open with a toolbox. Drew was bleeding gushers like it was The Shining or something. They broke off the leg of a table and started using it as a weapon, trying to bludgeon each other with that and a wrench. They had a perfect callback with the bracelet, tying it in with the finish of the match. Drew took a gnarly bump onto the edge of the steel steps after he missed the claymore. Punk gets the win after wrapping a steel chain around his knee and hitting Drew with the GTS. Punk would shut the cage door behind him triumphantly, signaling the end of their war, collapsing as he walked up the ramp, but he would refuse oxygen from the doctors. He wanted to call his wife and tell her, "Hey Jay, I did it!" After their performance, you have to push this to the forefront of the match of the year conversation. It was undoubtedly the best match of Drew McIntyre's career. And for Punk, I know he has the Money in the Bank 2011 win over Cena, his dog collar match with MJF and AEW, and the trilogy of matches he had with Joe in Ring of Honor. But there could be a strong argument made that this was his magnum opus too. Now, I grew up as a Ruthless Aggression era kid, but even I have grown conditioned and used to not seeing blood in wrestling anymore. When WWE went PG, it became taboo, and I began to believe that it was just unnecessary in this day and age. However, I don't think that this match reaches instant classic status without the use of blood. It added so much weight, gravitas, and stakes to this match. But I think when you see it used all the time, it just loses its luster and effectiveness. I'm looking at you, AEW. I think given that it's been so long since it's been allowed and it's so rare to see in WWE, that moments like this match and The Rock's "Look at You Now" beat down on Cody are going to be remembered and talked about for years to come. But believe it or not, the Cell was just the opening match. Not having that sadistic masterpiece as the main event of the show was Certainly a choice, but by choosing to close with the tag match, you know they had to have something pretty damn special in store for us. Of course, this match, and any other match on the card for that matter, weren't going to be able to compete with the bell-to-bell quality of Drew and Punk. But for what it lacked in-ring, it made up for it with star power and drama and a couple of really cool surprises, all of which progressed the story into so many new and interesting directions. The novelty of seeing Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns on the same side, if even for just one night, was pure magic. Just 6 months ago, I never thought I'd see Cody Crybabies and Bloodline stands unite for anything at all. But the tried old proverb, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, has never rang truer. Both guys coming through with the pomp and circumstance, Cody getting played to the ring by the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff Marching Band, Roman coming through with the orchestra, the Georgia Philharmonic. It was lit. It felt like HBCU homecoming out there. We know how these Bloodline matches tend to go by now. They start off real slow, they really lean into the crowd reactions and the atmosphere. Then they finally build to the big story beats and moments towards the end of the match. But even so, I couldn't have imagined a more impactful return for Jimmy Uso. Despite them always butting heads and how many times he stood up to Roman, in the end, he remained loyal to him and stuck by him. Their embrace and seeing the evolution of these two men as baby faces is so damn beautiful. These are the type of feel-good moments that we live for in wrestling, and it's desperately what this new phase of the Bloodline story has needed for so long. My favorite part of the whole thing was after the match, after Cody and Roman got the dub, Jimmy and Roman were getting ready to leave. Being the sore losers that they were, the Bad Bloodline swarm back into the ring and they just start wailing on Cody. And then Jimmy and Roman turn back around and they kind of hesitate. Jimmy looks to him and says, "Hey, you gave him your word, Uso. I'm with whatever you want to do, but are we gonna help him or not?" And that prompts Roman to actually go back in the ring and help Cody. Roman and Jimmy are able to fend the Bad Bloodline away. Then Roman and Cody shared a moment of mutual respect. In a way, they kind of acknowledged each other, which is crazy considering everything that has happened over the past 2 years. That right there is the domino effect that will lead us directly into the road to WrestleMania. Case in point, the final boss immediately reappeared afterwards, showing some contempt and a threat of what's to come. But for who? For Roman or for Cody? Rock went on IG Live after the show drinking his tequila, dapping up crew, and saying that he was fed up with all the bullshit that's happened over the past 6 months. But what BS is he referring to? Solo's overtaking of the Bloodline, Cody's reign as champion, Roman aligning with Cody? I have always felt that Rock was the higher power behind this Bad Bloodline, and that the line losing has consequences that Solo said was actually fed to him by The Rock. Rock hates Cody and wants the WWE Championship for himself, no doubt. That's why he keeps carrying around this vanity belt. But remember, even when Rock acknowledged Roman, we didn't even know if we could trust him back then. As of the making of this video, we could see 2 potential paths for the main event of WrestleMania 41. One of those being Rock versus Cody, and the other one being Rock versus Roman. I even saw some people thinking that we're gonna get a triple threat now. And that's the most exciting part of this. They gave us just enough for us to run rampant with speculation about. Although I would personally rather see Rock versus Roman in Vegas, I still think Cody versus Rock is the actual plan. Because unless Rock wants to spoil us with more than one match a year, I think he's a WrestleMania only attraction. We'll get the match that they already teased with Cody on the Raw After Mania for Vegas. And then they'll find a way to stretch out the build to Rock versus Roman for the following year's WrestleMania, hopefully in Wembley Stadium. Which, if happens, I guarantee you that it will become the biggest box office attraction in the history of professional wrestling. And even if I'm wrong about all that, Cody's gonna have his hands full for the foreseeable future. There's this crown jewel champion versus champion match that's getting ready to happen with Gunther. And what's the hot topic of conversation right now? The fallout from KO pulling the trigger and beating Cody ass. Owen said enough is enough and it's time for a change. And I gotta be real with you, this might have been one of the most creative and unique heel turns that I've ever seen. Yeah, I know we could all see the turn coming from a mile away, but the way they did it just made things feel so real, genuine, fresh. It wasn't the closing segment to Bad Blood or the send-off to the post-show conference or filmed on an episode of SmackDown. The only way that we know this happened is because fans were there to record it on their cell phones and they blasted it all over social media on some world star type shit. Even down to Triple H treating it like a real incident. Cody didn't even want to address it when he appeared on Raw. So how is Cody actually gonna respond? What is KO gonna say to try to justify his actions? And where does Randy Orton stand in all of this? SmackDown hasn't been this must-see in a while, and I cannot wait to see what happens this Friday. As far as how the rest of the Bad Blood went, I know the middle of the card left a lot to be desired. Nia and Bayley just wasn't as good as their SummerSlam match. Priest and Finn's match was decent, but I was expecting a lot more, especially when you consider that matches like Sammy versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight title and that exciting triple threat tag team ladder match didn't make the cut for the PLE. And the finish to Liv and Rhea just absolutely fell apart. It was bad. Horribly bad. But with all that being said, I still really love Bad Blood. You had a grand opening and a grand closing. There was a heavy hip-hop presence all over the show. There was a who's who of legends in attendance, all the way from my childhood crush Mickey James to the big bad booty daddy and Scott Steiner. Gunther and Goldberg turned an eye-rolling Saudi crown jewel announcement into something quite entertaining. And don't cancel me, but this made me excited to see Goldberg wrestle one last time. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero was a sponsor for a guy whose earliest childhood memories were wrestling in DBZ. This was a match made in heaven for me. And last but not least, there's so much coming out of this show that has implications for the future. So while it wasn't the perfect show from top to bottom, this was still the most excited I've been about a PLE since WrestleMania. But I think that's enough yapping for me out of one day. Now it's time for you guys to tag in. What did you all think about Bad Blood? What was your favorite part of the show and what are you most hyped about going forward? Did the middle of the card hamper your overall enjoyment? Did they make the right call with the placement of the main event? How and whatever you are feeling, please don't be shy and go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of EK Wrestling. My name is Brandon. I love you all and I appreciate you for the support as always. Until next time, always remember that wrestling is not a love story. It's much more than that. It's hope. And in a world surrounded in hate, greed, and violence, a world where closure may never come, we all know a place that has hot and cold hope on tap, for better or for worse. Take care, guys.